Welcome, guys, back to the I Love Wrestling podcast. I'm your host, as always, Justin Woolwan. Today we are welcomed with Mr. Tommy Two Scoops. How we doing, man?
Good. How are you, man?
I'm blessed, excited to be here. We had a little conversation before we got on the camera, made me even more excited. I cannot wait to see what comes of this conversation.
Me too.
Before we dive into your wrestling career, your wrestling fandom, all that fun stuff, you want to let the fans know where they can check you out on social medias, maybe upcoming events you got towards the end of May, things like that.
Absolutely. So all the socials are going to be Tommy two scoops underscore the two being the number two. Um, X, TikTok, Instagram. My Instagram is my largest following. I'm coming up, I believe, on like 2,600 followers. So it's really growing. I'm really proud of it. Um, you could find me everywhere as far as if you're on the Southwest region. This coming weekend on the 9th, I'll be wrestling in Denver, Colorado for Rocky Mountain Pro. And the very next day, I'll be with NWA New Mexico in Albuquerque on the Saturday the 10th. And pretty much every weekend for the next 6 weeks, I'm booked out. Um, the best way to look to find those dates is on my social media.
Okay.
I'm booked
Easy.
every weekend in May, so I'll be
Got you.
everywhere.
And, I like it when the accessibility to the schedule is just on social media. It makes it easy. So I'm excited to see where you land, what we get next. But we are the I Love Wrestling podcast. So I try to start at the beginning of not only when you started, but maybe when you became a fan. Do you remember when you found pro wrestling and what about it made you fall in love with it?
Oh, and I always say this every time someone asks me this question. I'm not making this up. One of my very first words was The Rock. Um, when I was a baby, my first word was Guy. I used to call my oldest brother Guy, which is his nickname, Steven. And my second word after that was The Rock. Um, that's the only thing that I've ever wanted to do, the only thing I ever saw myself doing. I was in kindergarten getting suspended for getting kids in ankle locks because I just thought that was normal. Um, I remember being in second, third grade, getting the colorful paper, right? Making tickets for a wrestling show, cutting them out and selling them to the kids in the playground where my friends and I would wrestle. Um, so I was always on that side of the. I was a promoter before I even knew it. Um, it was when I was 18 years old when I 100% realized, like, I decided I was going to do this. My entire life, I always figured I'll do it one day or when I grow up. But I got into college. I was a rugby player. I was originally going to play football for New Mexico Hands University, and it just so happened where I fell out of love with the sport, just the politics of the school, and then I had broke my collarbone, and I was depressed. Um, I had been to a couple like live WWE shows growing up in rural New Mexico. We don't get many WWE shows or TV tapings at all. Um, and I didn't have any social media. And I had a friend. It's like, hey, let's make a Facebook. Okay, I'm 18. I'm in college. I didn't have Wi-Fi in the ranch where I grew up until I was 18, so it was all internet was new to me. Um, I made a Facebook, and the same day I made a Facebook, some guy in a Kane mask messaged me. He's like, "Hey, bro, are you a wrestling fan like your brothers?" And I was like, "Yeah, a lot more so than them actually." And like they're fans, but like it's my thing. And he's like, "There's actually going to be this is a Wednesday." He said, "There's going to be a show on Saturday in Albuquerque, which is about a 90-minute drive." And he said, "Jeff Jarrett's going to be there." Like, oh, okay, that's awesome. And it sounds like a movie or something, but it's a I don't know where the universe spoke to me. That's the best way I could explain it. My mom was out of town, and we're a very close family, so we do like everything together. We always have been that way. But my mom was out of town with her dad. My two brothers were biologists at the school, so they were together in Corpus Christi, Texas, doing some research on the ocean. And it was just my dad and I, and I'm very close with him, but we've never had like just him and I. There's always like myself, my brothers, and him. But him and I have always bonded through wrestling. And then I just called him and I said, "Hey, what are you doing on Saturday?" He's like, "No, nothing. Everyone's out of town." I was like, "I just made a Facebook and there's a show with Jeff Jarrett in town." And then I actually won two VIP for tickets for like a giveaway trivia thing, and there was only two of us going. So him and I went front row. Day of Destiny 9, DWO, um, and it was the only company in New Mexico at the time. I didn't even heard of them, and I fell in love with it. The first opening match was Turbo Tony, who is my now current tag team partner, NWA New Mexico, and Johnny Swole, who is from Corpus Christi, Texas. And I met him, and I was like, "Oh, like this is awesome! My first time. I've always wanted to do this." And I was just chatting with him. He's like, "I'm from Corpus Christi. I have a long drive back." Chatting with him, I was like, "No way, my brothers are there right now." And it was just like a full like too many coincidences. Where my dad even won the VIP signed guitar from Jeff Jarrett for like the raffle, and it's our first time ever going. And and it was just like too many coincidences. And I met a wrestler in the bathroom by the name of Gino Rivera, who's a trainer out in Albuquerque. And I was like, "Hey man, I nice to meet you. I've always wanted to do this. I've never known how to do this, or it's my first ever show." And he told me like, I should have told like, I never thought I was big enough to do this, right? And he's like, "Dude, you're way bigger than me. If you're serious about doing this, like everyone said I couldn't do it, but here I am doing it. When you're ready, message me and I'll get you set up." I was still in college at the time though, and I actually went all the way up to my senior year before I came to the crossroads of, do I leave my hometown where I grew up and I went to high school and I'm going to college, where I just won a national championship in rugby? you know, do I stay with that life, become a teacher? I don't want to be a teacher the rest of my life, or do I take a shot and try out to get into wrestling school? So it's a very long, dramatic story, but pretty much I called my parents and I told them, "Hey, I need to meet with you guys," and they knew I was serious. I guess I've never really like I'm a very joyful guy. I like to mess around. I'm never too serious, especially with my parents or around my family in general. And I was crying because I was scared, and I was just telling them like I was terrified to tell them I was going to drop out of college on my senior year, and where my brothers are both graduating with masters and stuff, and there I am, dedicated all this time, money, effort, and it's just for a tryout. It's not even for anything for certain, you know. Um, and so I actually moved to Arizona to try out the Arizona Pro Wrestling Training Center. I drove 8 hours one way by myself. Never been in the big city by myself. Never been to Arizona, and I just drove there and I had a tryout, and I guess the rest is history.
So you were playing rugby, won a national championship in college, about to graduate, and still the passion for wrestling overcame all that.
Yeah, and I told my parents, I thought they were gonna think I'm crazy, and I was like I said, I was teared up. And my mom, who was a principal, she just retired about a year ago, last May, and so she's big on education. My dad's a coach, a football track coach. He's big on education, and then I was afraid to tell them. And my mom looked at me and she's in the eyes and said, she wasn't even surprised, she wasn't even phased, and here I am like shaking, and she says, "Oh, I already knew that was not like, oh, it's not a surprise to me." And I didn't think she was gonna give me her blessing. She was like, "I already we're waiting for you to say you're gonna do it. We always knew you were gonna do that." So it wasn't a surprise. She's like, she straight up told me, "I'm not surprised, and we're just waiting for you to do it." And so she gave me the green light. And my dad told me the same thing. He said, "I always knew you would, so might as well chase it. Now is the time." I was not even 21 years old.
That's incredible. It's cool to know that, like, I guess that parental intuition was there, and they're like, we was just waiting, like, seeing how long it'd take you. What was your reaction when you get to Arizona and you do the tryout? Like, how'd that tryout go? Obviously, it looks like you made it, but like, what was it? What was that tryout like? What was the process like going to a new environment and just fully sinking your teeth into
It was brutal to say to start off,
it?
but the entire process was so structured. So at this point in time, I stopped caring about anything school. Rugby was cool, but it hurt a lot. I mean, not that wrestling hurts any less; it hurts pretty much the same, or worse sometimes. But that was just my passion, and I had just got out of a relationship, a pretty serious one, where I lived with this person, and we I lost a dog in the separation, and mentally I was not the best area, but wrestling saved my life. It was my obsession. So I'm looking up on YouTube, how to do holds and just incredible pressing 101. And I remember like, how do I do this? And I met Chris Bay was actually the first wrestler I ever talked to because he grew up with that girl I was living with. They grew up together. And he's, oh, that's my friend. So I messaged him and said, hey, I'm so and so's friend. I've always wanted to wrestle. I watched you, on TWFAZ and stuff. How do I do this? And he pretty much set me in the right direction to every school in the West Coast. He said, FSW is where I'm from. This is this guy, message him. He'll get you ready to go. But honestly, he said, find the school that works best for you. And he could have easily said, hey, go to my school, like almost work me for money. But no, he was so honest with me. He said, like, I could tell you're going to be something. So pick, do your research. So I started researching everything. And it's a small world. I'm in Las Vegas, New Mexico, and I'm talking to a guy that's from DC area who lives in Vegas, and I'm talking to a wrestler. What? Blown away. Um, and I looked at a couple schools. There wasn't anything in Albuquerque until about a month or two after I already moved to Arizona. So, what would have been like, okay, move into the city an hour and a half away, I had to move to either Denver. Um, I like the structure of Rocky Mountain Pride. I work with them monthly, but Arizona, the structure to it is what stood out to me. So the whole process was okay, follow a specific email or fill out the online portal because it wasn't just like a show up and try out. They only did 4 tryouts per year, like summer, spring, winter, fall, and it's all application based. And it's like put your money where your mouth is. Um, they the one like the next role is like okay, apply, and it's like if you get past that first application screening, then they reach out to you and give you like a Zoom meet. Or for me, it was a Zoom meeting because I lived 8 hours away. But they set up an in-person appointment to see if you're a right fit. See, like if you actually have a realistic, you know, idea of what you want to do, and or a lot of people are fans first, right? And everyone's a fan. If you're a wrestler, you're a fan. But they're screening to get, the serious competitors out. They only want to, that's a school that's specifically made to train at the highest level. It is the Arizona Pro Wrestling Training Center is a school that's specifically made to set you up for a WWE tryout. So everything you do there for my tryout with Arizona Pro Wrestling Training is something that you do at a WWE tryout. So from day one, they hound you on, um, you know, the fundamentals of doing stuff the correct way, but also brutal workouts. So I did my Zoom meeting. I was in the school library. I talked to Dom Vitale, John Wolfgang, and I told my whole story. And Dom pretty much thought I was an idiot. He's like, "You're gonna drop everything to come wrestle with us," and he said, "But that's hard. That it's unheard of. And if you're willing to put your money in your mouth, is like, we'll see." I don't think he believed me. He hit me with like, "I meet 100 people like you a week, and no one ever shows up." Okay, challenge accepted. And I went through with the meeting. I made the next process, and I ended up moving. So the whole day was actually my brother Benny, him and I. It was I just turned 21. I have a sinus infection, and I would thought I was in decent shape because I was in rugby shape, right? Sevens rugby, fast paced. And we drive all the way to Arizona, and we're listening to Freebird and Simple Man, and I got the emotions running, and we get the night, so then I'm at the hotel, and I don't even have a place to stay. I have an appointment with an apartment complex, but nothing's set in. And we drive up to the wrestling school, and then I see him get an Uber and fly back home and leave me there. And that's when it hit me. Like I'm all alone. And then I look and it's a 115-degree room with, 30 people, maybe a little less. But they told me about 30 people were going to be there. And just thinking, there's a wrestling ring right there. And holy crap, I'm doing it. This feels like a movie. And I remember crying watching him, drive away because I was the only person I knew in this giant city. And then I had an ID right there, like, all right, bear crawls, that's me. I was one of two of the students to pass 100% on their 10 exercises for that class. We've had a lot of people do the 100% now, but for that specific class, I was one of two. And I'm not joking. It was the most brutal thing I've ever done in my life. I've done two-a-days. I've done, rugby and football, wrestling, high school wrestling, workout plans and trainings. But that tryout was the first thing you did was, all right, run around the ring for 20 minutes. There's only one rule: do not stop. And if you stop, thank you, try again next time. Because that meeting I did on the phone in person, they tell you, hey, well, this is the specific date. June 29th is my date. And I had this talk in like March with them. You have all this time to get in the very best shape in your life, because this is not going to be a fun or an easy tryout. Use this time to pass the tryout rather than just throwing someone in there. This way, half the people that signed up or got that far, they don't even show up to the tryout because they're not like decent enough shape. They're afraid of the workout. So I was told all 30 people were going to be there. I showed up and there was like 25-ish, 20. After just the runaround, only 10 people were remaining. And it was very calm. Thank you for your time. Try it out. Apply next time. Get in better shape. Thank you. Yep. Out of that 10, I am the only one of that class that's still wrestling currently. But that was how it started.
Okay. It seems like it's a brutal world because it is, but it also shows the determination you have to put that foot forward in order to make it successful. I think so often you hear stories of schools letting just anybody in, and who knows how successful that person will be. Um, and there's nothing against that. Like if Joe off the street wants to wrestle on the weekends, sure. But like it seems like at the facility you went to, it's definitely trying to weed in those that are going to be successful at the highest level.
Mhm.
And
Exactly what you just said is what they say.
really,
Exactly what you just said is exactly what they say.
okay. Maybe I've already talked to him. No, I'm just kidding. Um, but it's just I haven't honestly heard of a lot of facilities like that. So it's interesting to hear of a school that takes it that seriously. That says, okay, hey guys, if you're going to do this, let's make sure you can actually do this. And how did it feel for you to be, now looking back, you're the one that's still doing it? How does that feel?
It's, you know, I'm so proud of it. I wear those colors, proudly. When people see the Arizona Pro Wrestling Training Center logo on your shirt, they know they're going to get beat up. They know they're going to have to work that night. Not going to get beat up, but they know they're going to have to work that night. And
It's gonna be
we're like,
tough.
yeah. And I know that Don Vitale, his whole philosophy, and I would love for you to talk to him so you could also hear from his mouth. He's a psychopathic genius. Um, his whole philosophy is, as far as his structure, he's big on hate. And this is his quote, not mine. He says it's not a wrestling school if it's outside. That's training, but it's a wrestling school if it's in a building. And that's the kind of mentality we all kept. But not only that, it's about the structure, right? So he prides himself on being the only curriculum-based wrestling school in the state. And everyone else has their bar, their standards, but ours is a set curriculum where it's a 6 week. So let me just say it this way: after that tryout, if you don't make it, all right, try again next time. But if you do make it, all right, you're good to this day. Come on Monday, it'll be the beginner's day. And everything I just did in that tryout, now I'm doing it again for 6 weeks straight. Those are 6 weeks I'm not even allowed to touch the ring. Don't look at the ring, but can't touch it. That's my goal. You want to get in the ring? This is all you've ever wanted to do in your life? Earn it. So at the end of the 6 weeks, we have an evaluation night. And those numbers that we did on the tryout, so it's like push ups for time, squats for time, burpees for time, 20-minute run that's timed, bear crawls around the ring that are timed, tire flips that are timed in the brutal heat, right? It's those numbers from your tryout. All you have to do in your 6 weeks is beat those numbers. So if it took me 48 seconds for 20, tire flips, all right, well, now you have to do 47. Um, and you have to pass those numbers to advance to the next level. And then the next 12 weeks starts and you get in the ring. You don't learn how to wrestle. It's 12 weeks of in-ring conditioning, you know?
Okay.
It's learning how to roll correctly, get in and out of the ring correctly, workouts in the ring, blow-up drills, running the ropes for time. And then after you pass the next evaluation, can you do it professionally? Can you roll correctly? Do you have enough stamina to do 3-minute ropes? Do that on your evaluation where you're getting timed on it. All right, 3-minute rope runs. You have to get this time to pass. And then it's the next, I'm already there 15, 16 weeks. And then I got to learn how to bump. So I wanted to learn how to bump so bad, when it was 2 weeks of just left roll, right roll. Um, it really puts that vision question in your head of mini goals to reach the end game goal. I want to get in there ring so bad, I want to learn how to wrestle so bad. It got to the point where I was in the best shape of my life and I was training to be a wrestler for, 18 weeks and I didn't even know how to put on a headlock. That's the structure they have over there. And nowadays they have certain I was in the third ever class to go to that school. Now they've had so many. They just have their 5 years or 6 years successfully as a wrestling center that they have programs in place to expedite some, you know, the standouts and stuff, which is good. I wish they had that for me. Not that I would have needed it, but um, I like to see how the school's growing, but it is very, very difficult. And I will say this: they reject more people than they've ever accepted, and they only want a tight, group of people there, people they could trust.
How long did you like train before you was able to make that first matchup or make your debut?
So I'm one of those lucky individuals that right when I was about to have my debut, the world shut down with the coronavirus, or I shouldn't have said that. I don't know if I get flagged. With the pandemic, the world shut down. March of 2020, we had a big show planned. Um, I wasn't officially booked, but it was for code red. But it's like, all right, well, I've been doing this for about 8 months. It was my first foot in the door, kind of a deal. Um, Definitely the next man up, right? And then the world shuts down. 2020 happens. I worked in a gym. The gym closes down, but bills don't stop. So I moved back home to New Mexico in the ranch where I had to work just to pay for my rent that I wasn't even living in Arizona, um, just to keep my place there. And then I moved back in October. At this point, I was out of shape after being in the best shape of my life. I was drinking every day, partying every day with my brothers and we had a bonfire pit and that's what we did all summer. So what I did is I came back in October and guess what I did? The tryout all over again. So I did that a second time just to earn the right to jump back in where I was. Um, it took from that October, I didn't have my first match until August of 2021. But that was the first show we ran in August 21 since there wasn't allowed to like be people in buildings. So we ran an outdoor show in August, and it was like the first wrestling show in Arizona post pandemic. Um, was the rebirth of the Revelry. It was I'm so fortunate, 500 plus people in an awesome outdoor venue with all the amenities, and so since I first started was June of 2019 with a little buffer with COVID, but it was about 2 years ish
Okay.
until I had my first match. Yeah.
Um, And I believe you started under a different moniker of Tommy Test. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it's same. I talk about Dom this whole time, but that was kind of a running joke.
Okay.
I would, I remember exactly the day it happened. I was doing rope runs, and Dom, he's a yeller when he's drilling. When he's training, he's so smart, he's calm, he'll explain. But when he's drilling, and running ropes for times, and he's like, Tommy Test, like testosterone for running. And he kept on saying it a couple of times, and it just stuck. So when I had my first match, that was just my nickname. I didn't
Yeah.
pick it or anything. It was just given to me. He was like, all right, it works with me.
About I want to say a year or so in, you get to tangle up with Dom. Um, what was that experience like getting in there with the guy who trained you?
Man, so it was, I'll give you a little bit of the story. So there was New Mexico wrestling was completely dead. We have a New Mexico athletic commission, and it just strangles and guts independent wrestling because there's so many fines and fees, which I'll talk about. But we ran a show in Grants, New Mexico, which I have a lot of family out there, and a lot of family in Albuquerque, which is not too far. Um, they reached out to me to do a show in Pino, Arizona, Phase One Pro Wrestling. Hey, we're wanting to run a show in New Mexico. We're testing the waters. Okay, so Dom sent me out there. He was his friend, Dex, that was running the show. I wrestled, opening match, tore it up in front of 9 people. uh, we competed against high school football on a Friday night. We were in the gym, they're in the field. The field had a couple thousand people, and we had 12 people that were just too cold to inside watching a show. Bad scheduling, I would say. That being said, the promoter loved it, and he said, "Hey, well, do you know anybody in Grants?" I was like, "Yeah, my uncle used to be the mayor of Grants back in the day. Well, we're gonna run a show, main event against Dom." I was like, "Oh, that's crazy. I'll talk to him about it." And Dom was like, "All right, well, you're not ready. Like, you got to earn it." So I trained so tremendously hard to have my match with him because at the wrestling school, the only way to graduate the Arizona Pro Wrestling Training Center at the time was a 60-minute power hour, where you had to wrestle Dom for 60 minutes without messing up, or without asking for help, or without stopping. It's his power hour, and that's how you graduate. Uh, I graduated was a 30-minute in real time live match in New Mexico in front of it was pretty much intimate crowd of just my friends and family. Very special night to me. Um, Tore it up. I was so new. I was my first time ever being babyface or a good guy. I was always a bad guy before that, and I had a blast and a special moment.
Does being in front of friends and family enhance the maybe stress or anxiety that goes into going into a match like that?
Sometimes, not always. I mean,
Okay.
it's wrestling. There's politics everywhere. I've done shows in New Mexico where my wife's car has been vandalized in the parking lot just because people didn't like me. Um, and it's other wrestlers doing it, right? So stuff like that. But it's the best feeling ever at the same time. When I look in the crowd and I see my dad's eyes, he used to go when he was a kid to watch wrestling with his dad, and I used to watch wrestling with him, and now he gets to watch me, and it's his dad. All my grandpa ever wanted to do was be a wrestler, and he never did. So every time I do it, I'm doing it for him. I'm living his dream.
I mentioned off air that, I was told to talk to you by a certain individual. He also threw another name out there, the only other name he threw out there, and you two have tangled it up, and that name is Ocean Avery. What was it like working with him?
He is a beast. He is one of the strongest wrestlers I've ever competed against. He's a big guy. I'm about 230 pounds. Um, to him, I was like 150. He is overly strong. He is very smart. One of my favorite matches was right when I first moved to Albuquerque. He wrestled for GCW against Manders, and that's a match that I purchased on Triller that I'll go back and watch just for my own personal entertainment. Um, I'm a big fan of him. He works really hard, and he was just in Germany wrestling. He's gonna do tremendous things. He's, in my opinion, him and I would be the top two prospects of New Mexico, hands down.
That was the words that was given to me when I was told to talk to you guys. So just throwing out that you're not the only one that thinks that. So that's a good thing. Um, you know, we've talked about the difficulties of maybe uh, getting out in the New Mexico area because of athletic commissions, or maybe the shortage of companies. Um, so what was it like for you to expand out of New Mexico and get into Colorado and Arizona and California, and all the way out to Iowa or Missouri?
I have actually worked for all those places before I worked in New Mexico. Besides that Grants show, that was like a one-off deal. I jumped on that because I thought it was going to be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I honestly
Okay.
did, because even when I talked to those guys, they were like, "This is a trial and error. This, we're not promising anything after this." But they gave me that moment. They gave me that main event when there was no anything for certain after that. So I'll always love and appreciate Phase One for that. Um, I started off in Arizona. I was living in Mesa, Arizona for about 5 years ish, not even. Yeah, just about, without the buffer for 2020. Um, and I loved it. I met my wife there, and I want to move back. It's just way too hot. Eventually, I will. I know when I want to give my full and honest shot for a WWE tryout, I will train there to prepare for that. Right now, I'm trying to finish school finally, taking some online summer classes. Um, my wife is a dental assistant. She has an awesome job, and she wants to further her education as well. And it's just honestly so much cheaper to live in New Mexico. But also, it's a perfect timing where I get to work monthly, sometimes 2 to 3 times a month in my home state, which is unheard of. Um, but yeah, I wrestled in Arizona first, and we had Slam U is our student show for the Arizona Pro Wrestling Training Center. And over there, our student shows are getting 400 people for the student shows. And then our main show is live on Broadway, Phoenix Championship Wrestling. And those shows, five, six, seven, we even did a 1,500 person crowd, all organically grown by monthly wrestling shows. And they space them out like that about every 8 weeks, specifically to build up, you know, a big fight fill event. And they always sell out. They're awesome shows. Phoenix Championship Wrestling puts together. It's just like, it's what independent wrestling should be. And so I got my foot in the door there, and then I would just hop in cars. Hey, we're going to Vegas, 5 hours away to the spot. Okay, cool. And then we worked with PCW Ultra out of Wilmington, Long Beach area, and that's like our sister promotion, but they're a lot bigger than us for sure. That's where Fatu's from, Jacob Fatu.
Hmm.
Um, and we would go help them out a lot, and they would start using a couple of our guys. And I got on one of those shows in the pre-show, and I did all that first. And I even did Denver, Colorado for the first time I did. I was still living in Arizona, so that was a 16-hour drive one way deal too, or 12-hour drive one way. Um, it, I didn't get the in New Mexico until Duke. Now NWA New Mexico, then Duke State Championship Wrestling was created.
Okay. What went into the transition from Tommy Test to Tommy Two Scoops?
It was at Ultra. Um, I was a heel. I was just angry, kind of. And here's the thing: a lot of people say like, "Oh, when you're wrestling, you just be yourself, turned up to 11." Well, there's some truth to that, but I feel like myself personally is I'm always such an over the top character that I just do stuff that I think is funny or that I think is cool. So in a way, I'm not turning myself up to 11. I sometimes just do what I want to do. Um, So Tommy Test was kind of forced. He wasn't me doing what I want to do because he was a bad guy, and he yelled at people and he cheated. I had fun with it, but it I was organically a babyface. Um, I the crowd would cheer me more than they booed me, and I'm doing everything to boo them, but I would make him laugh by saying stupid stuff. And I was in a feud with this wrestler named Metanoia, another student, and he was a rave. His character is like a raver, but he lived the gimmick. He would actually party with the fans, and we're at the end game bar in Mesa, Arizona, and they would do this thing where we wrestled outside and then a rave upstairs. So he would party after his match, and they loved him. He'd bring the whole rave down and watch his match, and then they go party after. Awesome. He was over with that crowd. Well, I'm in a feud with him, and I'm shaking a protein bottle. I just got off work at the gym. It's a Thursday night. It's hot, and I get on my brother-in-law's truck, and I tell my wife, record this video. And pretty much it's a 50-second, hey, tonight, Mesa, Arizona, you know, Metanoia, tonight we finally meet while you're partying with the fans. I'm drinking my 2 scoops deluxe, I said, of protein. And I was drinking my protein on my way. That's what I normally do. And when I got to the venue, all the boys were like, oh, 2 scoops. That was good. That was great. I liked it. Didn't think much of it. In that match, I'm the heel. Amateur wrestler, took him down, double leg, and I went two, and the whole crowd repeated after two. And then it just in my head, 2 scoops deluxe. I picked him up, gave him a scoop slam, was not even thinking about it. And I was like, here's your scoop. Boom, gave him a scoop slam. Picked him up, did it again. 2 scoops, the crowd liked it. But I was a bad guy still. About a couple weeks later, I go up to PCW Ultra, and I've been out there 4 or 5 times at the time. Um, it's a very hard show to get on too. Very, very big names. Where I met Rhino, and it was kind of like a show up to work and hope for a pre-show. And I butted in it like 4 or 5 times, so I wasn't expecting to get a pre-show match. And I only have at this time around 10 matches under my belt, if that. And Dom says, "Hey, opening match. I have a guy from California. He's on his way. He's on a motorcycle, so I'm sorry if he's late, but you're the opening match of the pre-show." And I was like, "Okay, cool. I could do that." And 6 minutes as my first time ever being a babyface, as my first time ever being a Tommy 2 scoops, my first time ever wearing a plain black singlet. They said 2 scoops, and I go out there, we lock up, get the tackle. I don't go, shoot him off, get the tackle. He bumps, and I say 2 scoops, and 700 people in unison repeated after me, 2 scoops. And I was like, wow, this works, and it was just my first time ever doing it. Um, the guy's kicking my butt. He goes to pin me. Every time I kick out at two, I would say scoops, and the crowd ate it up. So for the remainder of the night, for every 2 count, no matter who was wrestling, it was 2 scoops. And I believe it was a Psycho Clown versus Jacob Pod 2, I think was that main event. But for every single pinfall for the rest of the night, it was 2 scoops to the point where, I'm just blown away where I'm at the merch table and I have just the same amount or more people with like the big names. And I'm blown away. Like, this is something. I never made more money in my life up to that point in wrestling. Sold out all of my merch. Um, they invited me back. Hey, we have another pre-show. At this point, everyone showed up with signs. And I've never been there. It's my first time wrestling in California. Did 2 more pre-shows. I did a tag team second match, and then a main event against Freddie Cordova. Tore it up, and then they put me on their main show, and that was the last show they had. Um, so I worked my way up, but it got to the point for that last show where I'm not trying to say I was the most popular there. I definitely wasn't. We have Jacob two in the main event, the main guy. But they were just chanting, "We want 2 scoops" the entire night. It's a night I'll never forget. But that's kind of how it started. It was by accident, through in a
Okay.
match, in a promo.
What brought yourself and Turbo Tony together?
So Turbo Tony was like I said earlier, the first ever wrestler I saw wrestle live. Um, which he was like my age at the time, which is crazy to think about. He was wrestling opening match for Day Destiny 9. And I just remember thinking, okay, this guy's cool. He works out. He looks like a football player. He's local. He's who I want to be. Immediately looked up to him. Um, like I said, I just made Facebook at that time. And we became Facebook friends. And I remember talking to him about like fitness, and he would offer his help as a trainer. I was like, oh, this guy's cool. He's a wrestler, and he knows I want to be a wrestler, so he's helping me with stuff. I thought of the world of him. I was actually gonna get him to move to Arizona. Um, at the end game bar, I talked to him. He was on a show out there. There was no wrestling in New Mexico, and he's like, "Hey, I'm trying to move out here. There's nothing in New Mexico right now. You're working every weekend over here. There's something to do." Because so I was helping him get an apartment and stuff, and then he ended up staying in Albuquerque and stuff in New Mexico. Had to come up, but yeah, I met him because he was the first ever wrestler, and we became friends since then. And after that, he's one of my very best friends. He's just an awesome person inside and out. He's tearing it up right now in the ring. He always says, he credits me for a lot of his success now. It's like I'm doing more in my 12th year of wrestling than I did in my first, 10 or whatever. And I'm very proud of him. He's killing it.
How did it feel for you to be able to win the Charge Championship?
Man, I'm still mad about that. It came out last night, the episode where I lost it. But that was in Ball Arena where the Nuggets and the Avalanche play, so I don't mind losing in that arena in front of 5,000 6,000 people. But it was awesome because I actually got it from D'Lo Brown. So D'Lo Brown is one of the main guys at Rocky Mountain Pro, and Vince Russo at the time was writing it, and they pulled me aside and like, hey, uh, we want you to do a scoop deal. I was like, okay, it's Vince Russo writing. I love it. And I technically purchased the Charge Championship for 2 scoops in a bottle, and then it became reinstated where I had to defend it, and I was pretty successful up until this last match where I don't think I should have lost, but I did anyway.
What was your favorite defense?
Oh, probably against Turbo Tony. We did that in front of like 600 screaming people. Um, that was pretty recent. I did a match against Dylan Anderson. It was like a improv 3 out of 5 falls match. So that was probably my personal favorite one, the one I had the most fun in. Um, but besides that, I mean, every match I got to defend it. We did one in Cheyenne, Wyoming against Southside Sammy that I really liked. But I would say my number one was against Turbo Tony. That was a fun one.
You said a 3 out of 5 falls match.
Yes,
I love it. I love it. That's great. Um, that's good stuff. I've never heard of that before. Like
it was
obviously
my first
you got
time.
your best of sevens, best of what 3 out of 5 is a great. I'm stealing that. I like that. Um, you also with Turbo Tony won the DCCW tag team titles. What was it like to be able to win those championships next to somebody you've been connected with pretty much your whole career?
Emotional, man. Uh, just kidding. I did cry a little bit. Um, we were the inaugural champions, and we beat our rivals, Pretty City Express, who we have gone to war with in Colorado, in Arizona, in New Mexico. We're gonna do it in California soon. These are Devin Reno and Class. They are my rivals, and they bring the best out of me, and I hope I can bring the best out of them. And I think that it's only a matter of time before they're picked up by a major company. But until then, I'm gonna sit kicking their butt. Um, we wrestled them in a it was going to be a tournament deal, and then we had because the commission had to switch up last minute stuff, and it became the main event, which a tag team main event is awesome. You never see those much,
Always awesome.
and it was for the inaugural Green and Red Chili Tag Team Championships. And in New Mexico, green chili is our whole world, so it was just a cool belt to have at the same time. One strap's green, one strap's red, and we thought we were losing the entire time, and it was a surprise to us when we won. And it was, I was like, you guys, this is the best moment of my life. I was all my emotions you see when we win those belts on YouTube, on TV, those are real emotions because I couldn't believe my eyes that we won. And it's a night I'm very fond of. I remember telling them to cut the camera so I could just speak to the people and tell them thank you. And tell my parents thank you for everything. Tell my wife thank you for everything. Tell Turbo in the middle of the ring, thank you for getting me here. This is I couldn't have done it without you. And that was a very special moment for me for sure.
It's great. And then I have to imagine being a part of something like NWA New Mexico, um, pretty much from the beginning, had to be exciting as well.
I've been on every single show except for the first Duke City show. I was on my honeymoon in Sedona, Arizona, where my car blew out, actually.
Cool.
So what was supposed to be a honeymoon turned into a week of fun traveling in tow trucks and stuff. But that was the first ever Duke City show, and I've been on every single show since then. So it it's been organically grown. I've had some of my best matches in the LRA theater. It's something I'm very proud of. I wear my NWA colors proudly. I love the atmosphere. I love the crowd. New Mexico crowds are so rowdy. They're so unique. The venue we run in specifically has 2 to 3 bars open at all times, upstairs, downstairs, outside, plus a liquor store that's connected to it.
Okay.
So, so they're fun and exciting shows.
The fans are thirsty there.
Absolutely, absolutely.
um, you know, being a part of the territory system has to be interesting because it's new. So like obviously the territories were a thing back in the day. What's it like to now, for you to be a part of the new version, the Billy Corgan NWA version of this territory system?
It's the coolest thing ever because I grew up watching wrestling that my dad would show me on old VHS tapes. Like I say, we didn't have Wi-Fi till I was 18. So every time we'd go to FYE or any of those old stores that don't exist anymore, we'd buy the wrestling DVDs. So I have a wall full of DVD collections. And my dad was he grew up, he was born in 1970. So as a kid, he got to experience the territory days. And they
Yes.
would do the loop. He lived in Albuquerque as a kid where they would do like, okay, Amarillo, Texas, Phoenix, Arizona, Albuquerque, and they, whatever. They'd come once a month. So he grew up watching that stuff. And whenever we were able to watch it, he would show me his favorites. And I remember this. So I always thought the NWA and Dusty Rhodes, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. So to be a part of that is I'm living I'm living it for my dad, or in a way, like, but it's his childhood that I get to experience, and it's the most awesome feeling.
I know up here in the Chicago area, NWA Chicago started not too long ago. Actually, tonight, as we're recording this, they will crown their first NWA Chicago heavyweight champion. If I butchered the name of that, I apologize, those that are watching. But has that been in conversation for the New Mexico territory? Is it something where they're trying to establish their own titles and to really establish their own brand?
Yeah, I actually saw on Instagram today Billy Corgan shared the belt review
Yes.
for that. Yes, absolutely. I believe everything is we're switching over from DCCW to NWA New Mexico.
Okay.
So I believe our heavyweight championship now is NWA New Mexico Heavyweight Championship.
Okay.
Um, our next show on the 10th of May is actually going to be in a six-sided ring. It's our anniversary show, our 2 year anniversary show. So it's a very big one. I believe there's like 2 tickets that remain.
Okay.
We typically sell out, so it's sold out faster than usual.
Nice. That's exciting. And like I don't know, just seeing what Corgan's doing with the territories is interesting because I think a lot of people assumed after like the CW maybe that the NWA would just fade away. And it seems like he's like, you know what, we're not going to do that. We're going to go this different route. And like what we're seeing with Exodus and then NWA Chicago and NWA New Mexico, and I'm sure there's plenty of more territories that I haven't
Hmm.
listed. It seems like he's um, sparking, at least on a national scale,
Hmm.
something that could revitalize the NWA as a whole. And it's definitely got to be exciting from a competitor standpoint to be able to be a part of that because I assume at some point in time wrestlers will flow through this territory system. Is that something you're excited for?
That's absolutely the plan. We've already had our heavyweight champion Hobo Hank compete on Power. Um, so that's the whole dynamic is hey, we send them people, they send us people. We're the furthest most west so far to be in the territory. I know there's San Antonio, NWA San Antonio, is a territory as well. So we thought, that's still 13 hours from us in Albuquerque, but that's the most west so far. And I know it's just going to grow and grow and grow. It's exciting for those guys because I wrestled Bounty Hunter, who lives in Sarasota, NWA wrestler. And he's like, I love coming out here because this is the most west I come. It gives me reason to come out here. So those guys love coming from the south and the east to come out here, right? And we love having them because we know we're going to head that way as well. So it's a bridge that helps both ways.
Something like it's not as recent as I'd like to think, but WWID has also come in fruition not too long ago. They've announced the WWID championships, things like that. As somebody who's still firmly in this independent circuit, is that something that also interests you? Like from a, you got NWA here, but there's also the ID thing that could also come at any point in time.
Well, just wait till you hear this. That I personally think AEW is my destination of choice. So I'll throw
Okay.
a third path in there. Um, I love the whole ID program. It's so exciting. I've been able to not only share the locker rooms, but you know, sleep on the same couch as those guys and pick their brains. I'm good friends with Jack Cartwheel and stuff. We've done several shows together, but we've rode on the same flights together and stuff like that. He's an awesome guy. I already know he already is something special, but he's gonna be like a household name very soon.
Definitely.
Not that he isn't, he's already on Tubi. But um and that's just an example. I'm not trying to like carry off of his success, but I've been on a lot of these shows with these guys, Jordan Oasis. Um and I've been around the whole thing. So a little inside of pro wrestling here. I for Mania weekend that Friday I wrestled for Devotion Championship Wrestling, based out of Salt Lake. We did a show in Vegas. Tommy Dreamer is the heavyweight champion, and I'm just blown away. I'm excited. I was in a tag team title match, and I was having fun. Well, the very next show after us was the ID tournament. So I'm seeing all these guys that I've already met in other locker rooms in Colorado. We do pretty much every taping. We do an ID match and stuff, and you know, I've traveled with these guys, and I've been on the same show with them, so they recognized me at this Mania weekend. And I got out of my match, and as soon as I got to the back, I was, oh, Two Scoops is here. And everyone's shaking my hands because they've met me. And it was just a taste of what could be. And I got to stick around in the locker room for the ID tournament because I just wrestled before. But also, it wasn't that I was just lingering, but like people were asking me, hey, how do I get out here? Who's in charge in New Mexico? And I was just making all these connections to the point where I was meeting people I never thought I'd meet before, getting new Instagram followers, getting new phone numbers, and just that networking alone, just by being around the ID guys, it motivated me beyond measures, man. Like that would be, it's a goal that doesn't seem too far, but like it's very hard to. And I say that because there's wrestlers that I know that are like way better than me, and if they're not on it, then why should I be on it? But then I think to myself like I think I deserve it as well. It's a constant mental battle. Um, if you ask certain people inside my circle, they'll probably say I'm not ready. But if you ask the people I meet on the internet, they'll say I'm 100% ready. So I just have to, tell myself be really realistic.
It's one of those that it'll happen in due time, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
and I'm not
Um,
even stressed. Yeah,
you brought up that you believe, or maybe you feel like AEW is your destination. What leans you towards All Elite Wrestling?
it's always been my favorite, and
Okay.
I say that because they started in July of 2019. I started the last month of June 2019. So as I first started, when I was doing those 6 weeks where I couldn't touch the ring, weekly I got to watch the hottest, newest, youngest flame that was just, lit. And, it was rebellious, it was new, it was fresh. I grew up as they grew up.
Okay.
So they've been around as long as I've been around, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, I remember a week, month before I moved out here, watching the press conferences live, thinking this is the most legit competitor or something that I've never seen before. I mean, I grew up at the end of the Attitude Era. I was born in '98, but I mean, I don't remember. I was a kid. For this, it felt like a revolution in professional wrestling. One of my trainers, Gabriel Gallo, that probably trained me the most, like in the ring, he works for AEW. Um, and I've been fortunate enough to do like seminars with Jerry Lynn and stuff like that. And just by being around it, it's game changing, man. And they're coming to Albuquerque for the first time ever now in May and on the 21st. So we don't ever get TV taping out here, and we're doing a live Dynamite, and that's a big deal to me. We were supposed to do it in 2020, that didn't happen because of the pandemic. So finally, we get WWE once a year, if that, for a house show, if that. Sometimes we don't. So to have that coming here, 10 minutes from home is it's awesome, and I can't wait, to see what happens there because that's my dream destination.
Okay. I'm gonna add, I got two more questions for you, and then I'll let you go. One, so far you've been in this journey for several years now. What's been so far your favorite match or moment that you've been able to accomplish so far?
Okay, so my favorite moment would be when I won my first ever championship match. It was in PCW, which is such a hard show to get on, period, even as a student. And I say that because they're very traditional, 7 to 8 matches per card. So, 8 matches at 16 spots at a tag match, triple threat. You have 20 wrestlers. There's only 20 spots on that card. That's very competitive when you have 50 plus people trying to take those spots in the interior school alone. And then, okay, well, we're bringing in this person and this tag team from Vegas. And so then there's only 16 spots available. So that's very competitive to just even get on those shows. And I really organically worked my way up from opening match pre-show, where my family drove 8 hours one way to see me lose in less than 5 minutes in the opening match pre-show, to work my way up to the main event of the pre-show, to the opening match of the main card, 2 years a month at a time, to the point where I won the crowd over with the two scoops. Um, and I had family in the front row: my mom, my dad, my wife, my brothers, my aunt Jessica, my uncle John, and they came all the way from the small country to visit me in Arizona. I lived there at the time, and we weren't supposed to win the belts. They got me again. I didn't think so, and then we won the belts by surprise. And that was the last thing I had on my top. I had a 5 goal list when I first started training, and my last one was win a belt for that set of five that of goals I had, and I just accomplished it when I didn't think I was going to anytime soon. That's my favorite moment because the emotion I felt was real. I jumped on the guardrail, and my mom grabbed me. That was real. I envisioned that a million times in my head, and when I did it, I didn't even think about it. That's my favorite moment. My favorite match is actually at PCW Ultra against Wise Guy. NorCal beast. He's a big name out there in Northern California. Um, he beat the crap out of me, and I beat the crap out of him, and we were the opening match, and I got so much from 10, 15 minutes than I ever did anywhere else in that night. I think I proved myself. I proved to myself that I could hang in there with a big name or a big guy or someone that's good at wrestling.
Okay.
Doing student shows for so long, I wrestle a lot of beginners or people that are on my experience levels. So to wrestle someone that has that much experience and not only hang in there with him, but compete and I was proud of myself that night.
That's great. I love it. Um, Last but not least, you brought up goals. What would you say your goals are for the rest of 2025?
Well, I do this thing where when I first started wrestling, I had 5 goals. One of them was, hey, I want to graduate from wrestling school, have a debut match. Okay. One of them was make my own T-shirt, my own 8x10, which that was just like a fandom thing. That's something I remember seeing Turbo do and thinking, oh, I want to do that. That was a goal I had. Um, when my last one was win a championship. Another one was personal one. I haven't told anybody, but I got that one checked off. Um, but pretty much I set these 5 goals in mind, and I would just look at them every day, and they look unattainable. Um, and then I said, okay, well, what's next? Another 5 goals. Well, that one was though I in record time beat those 5 goals. Um, with New Mexico wrestling being dead, one of my goals is to bring wrestling to my hometown of Las Vegas, New Mexico. Never, ever in my wildest dreams think I'd be able to do that, and I pulled it off. Where Phase One came to me and said, "Hey, we have an opportunity," and I said, "Hey, well, I have the hookups." So we collaborated, and I got to wrestle in front of a sold out, where that it's 10 people away in my hometown. That was a really awesome moment, and that was my last goal on that. But my goals for the rest of this year, and I've been public about it, is to do extra work with WWE, AEW, get my foot in the door. I think that's one of the next big steps I want to take. Is I've been fortunate enough to wrestle in, you know, the Curry County Event Center, the Rio Rancho Event Center, Ball Arena, these massive arenas where WWE runs, and like, see how I get to be in the locker rooms, the backstages and stuff, and to do that so early in my career it's a blessing. But now I get to witness that firsthand. You know, um, that was a goal, and hopefully, I already know I will be there on the 21st. But hopefully I could meet the right people and make an impact, and that's my first taste of what AEW would be like.
Yeah.
Which is my end all be all goal. Um, I think that's awesome. But so that's one of my goals. My other goal is actually win my first heavyweight championship. So I've won mid cards, I've won TV championships, and I've won tag championships in different places. But another goal I have is for my first heavyweight, which I thought I was supposed to this year. Um, Still waiting on it. Hopefully
Okay.
soon. Um, and then I guess I do have another goal, and that would be to work with NWA Power, and I think that would really you know work with them on their TV program. I do monthly TV with NWA New Mexico, but if I my one of my main goals is to get out there in Florida because it's possible. Hobo Inc. just did it. I want to do it next. I want to be the next one.
Okay. And those all seem like very achievable goals, especially in the situation you're in. I could definitely see you doing, if not one, but all three of those in the next, well, we got 6 months, 7 months left.
That's the
Uh,
goal.
I could see it.
And then I guess another goal I have is I'm a big fan of like live music entrances. Always have been. Big
Okay.
heavy metal fan. And I'm just saying this so it's on record. So when it does happen, we're going to look back at this podcast and you're going to say, Justin, I told you first. There's a band out of Texas called Kublai Khan, and they have a song where there's only one lyric, and the lyric is two. So when you watch them live on YouTube, the singer comes up and he tells the whole crowd, I'll throw your twos up. I want to see your twos in the air. And massive crowds throw up the two fingers. and it's the heaviest, hardest, most insane breakdown I ever heard in my life. And it's just two, and it just explodes. I cannot wait to one day walk down the ramp to Kublai Khan playing that song live because it's just a song that fits me so perfect as a character, and I've never actually used it like for my entrance and stuff because I want to save it for something special. Um, that's that's like an all-time career goal. So
Okay.
Kublai Khan, if you're listening, let's make it happen.
You heard it here. I mean, we will look back on that moment when it happens and say, he booked it here.
Definitely.
Tommy, thank you so much. This was an absolute pleasure. I try to do this every podcast. I do this every podcast, but I'm going to leave the door open. Everyone come back up for part two. Maybe we follow up after you make that NWA Power debut, win a world championship, whatever it is, 6, 7 months down the line. I'd love to have you back.
That sounds awesome to me, man. And part two scoop sounds like a good
Part two
uh
scoops. That's the
part
title.
two
Part two
scoop. That's the
scoops. That's it.
let's do it. I'm so down for that. We'll connect. I'll let you know as soon as I do that. As soon as I accomplish these goals.
Sounds good. I will just leave this off at see you next time.
Sounds good. See you soon.